Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the Voice of Reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And today, we are getting a better idea of the Russian force composition that is building up specifically in the south near Zaporizhzhia and Volhodar. It does appear that the Russians are planning some sort of operation along the southern sector of operation, namely near Volhodar and Zaporizhzhia, located in this area here. Now, are the Russians going to go after Zaporizhzhia specifically? Possibly, but ultimately it does appear that the Russian military may try to roll up the right flank of the Ukrainian armed forces in the south, while it continues offensive operations along the eastern front in the direction of Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut, and other areas such as Ardivka as well. So what forces do the Russians currently have south of Zaporizhzhia? Well, right now the information that we have is that there are significant elements of the Russian 19th Motorized Rifle Division. Supporting those Russian forces are Chechen National Guard units of the Rosguardia, or the Federal Guard Service of the Russian state. We estimate there is anywhere between 2,000 to 4,000 of these Chechen National Guard Special Operations and Special Designation Motorized Rifle Brigades and Regiments that will be assisting the 19th Motorized Rifle Division. Further to the east, near Volhodar, you're seeing a combination of Russian units. You're seeing two Russian Naval Infantry Brigades, specifically the 40th Naval Infantry Brigade and the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade. And supporting those Naval Infantry units are the 127th Motorized Rifle Division, and supporting also the 127th Motorized Rifle Division and those Marine Brigades are forces of Novorossiya, the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic forces, which are essentially now part of the Russian military machine, or the Russian armed forces. Now, we've also been hearing reports about how the Russian military is starting to adapt to this conflict. And I wanted to talk about three important both weapon systems and possibly aircraft changes to some of the Russian doctrine that we may be seeing in this ongoing war. So first, in regards to Russian tanks, obviously the Russians are continuing to produce the T-90 breakthrough tanks, and we've heard about the Russians deploying the T-90 tank in a unconventional manner, meaning not always using these tanks in maneuver warfare, but using them in conjunction with drones to almost act as self-propelled artillery pieces, and fairly accurate self-propelled artillery pieces as well, from what we're hearing on the ground. The next system is cruise missiles. Now, we know about the Kh-101, but we're starting to see variants of the Kh-101 being deployed by the Russian military. And how do we know this? Well, we've found remnants of these systems on the ground, and we know that these systems are now being upgraded to include optical targeting systems found on Kh-101s, and more importantly, and more interesting, is the addition of countermeasures being applied to these cruise missiles. So we know that the Ukrainians are engaging these cruise missiles with surface-to-air weapon systems. And the Russians have added these countermeasures to try and spoof these Ukrainian or Western air defense systems that have been provided to the Ukrainians, to include Stingers, obviously the S-300s, Books, what have you. There's a wide range of air defense systems now operating in Ukraine. And then finally, we have heard from Ukrainian forces on the ground in terms of what is their most significant challenge right now, and especially in the areas near Bakhmut, areas west of Horlovivka, areas near Sloviansk, Kramatorsk. The common theme that we're hearing now is that Russian aviation is able to very precisely strike Ukrainian ground targets. And a lot of times, these Ukrainian forces on the ground do not hear these Russian aircraft. It is possible. We know that the Russians do have limited amounts of targeting pods. But could we start to be seeing the additional use of targeting pods by the Russian military? So that would give the Russians the ability to conduct standoff strikes, meaning they could be many, many dozens of miles away from targets near Bakhmut, near Chasiv Yar, and then conduct a release of ordnance, a bomb release, and fairly precisely hit a target. We have not seen that in the past. Now, obviously, the Su-34 fullback has an internal targeting pod or device that is not the same as Western targeting pods, but nonetheless, it is a targeting device. Now, again, it's possible that newer generations of targeting pods are starting to be deployed by the Russian military. So that covers it for today. The one other issue I wanted to talk about, circling back to the deployment of newer types of tanks. I mentioned the T-90 Breakthrough, but one additional it had initially escaped me was the deployment of new additional variants of the T-72 Bravo 3. We're starting to see newer types of T-72 Bravo 3s being fielded. I would call these T-72 B3 heavies. The thing that sets these vehicles apart from the normal Bravo 3, other variants of main battle tanks, is the addition of much more reactive armor. We see more reactive armor on the front aspect. We see more reactive armor on the roof of the vehicle. We see more reactive armor on the rear of the vehicle as well. So again, this is the Russian military adapting to what is happening on the ground. And they're hoping that these additional sets of armor on these T-72, T-72B3 will help them survive contact with javelins, in-laws, what have you. Now, will that prevent those vehicles from being destroyed or rendered mission unoperational? Probably not. But what it will do is possibly save the crew. And that is for tankers, and having the confidence that your tank is not going to kill you after it's been hit is something that's significant. Now, are these additional armor sets working? We don't know yet. We assume in some cases they are, in some cases they aren't. But again, we'll have to continue to analyze what is happening, and ultimately, post-war, we will be able to do an after-action review or later down the road and see how these heavier T-72s are faring against more modern anti-tank weapon systems. Again, that does it for today. Thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. And as always, have a good day.